We created this video to supplement Tom's formal petition for commutation. We want you, the members of the Executive Clemency Advisory Council, to hear from Tom's supporters in their own words. Senator Carl Levin has followed Tom's case closely for nearly a decade. He sat down with us to explain why he supports commutation for Tom. Why should the parole board recommend commutation for Tom Cress?
There's a lot of factors that come together in this case. The most important factor to me is that the detective in charge and the police chief, who were the ones in charge of this case against Tom Cress, are absolutely convinced that he is innocent. That carries huge weight, I would hope, with the governor. The reason, of course, that they now believe that is that the serial killer who has confessed to this crime has passed a lie detector test confessing to the crime, was in the neighborhood, and the two police officers here, the former police chief and the detective, are satisfied that he in fact was the right man. Also, a number of people who testified against Tom Cress, who came forward after reward money was offered and they received, subsequently recanted their testimony. On top of that, you have the bit of physical evidence that was available for scientific scrutiny at the time, was evidence which showed that he was innocent. The hair that was available was not his hair that was under the fingernail of the victim. And also the fact that the evidence which subsequently could have been subject to DNA testing, after DNA testing came along, was destroyed by the prosecutor, and according to the two police officers, was destroyed after they notified the prosecutor that they believed that Thomas Cress was innocent. That is a collection of factors which provide a fairly overwhelming case to present to the governor to exercise her discretion for commutation.
We also went to Springfield, Michigan to speak with two other prominent supporters of Tom, former Battle Creek Police Commander Joe Newman and former police detective Dennis Mullen.
We have formed an opinion that probably Tom Cress didn't murder Patricia Rosansky. I say probably because we're not time travelers, but we were in the process of doing that when our investigation was effectively thwarted by the prosecutor's office and not allowed to reach this conclusion of where it was headed. And so it never really had a chance to play out the way it should have. And it would have, mathematically in my head, he couldn't have done it. I mean, there's just no way. Michael Ronning has too much credibility.
In addition to thinking that Cress is innocent, I'm also bothered by the fact that there are two other murders out there that are unsolved, and at least legally listed as unsolved by the prosecutor's office. And I think they're both solvable, and I think we know who did that. And as Danny said, there needs to be additional investigation done.
What makes Tom Cress's case special to you? Why is it worthy of that, of your efforts?
Because I think he's wrongfully convicted, and I don't. That's such a travesty of justice that I don't even know how you ever make that right again. And it is unusual for two folks in law enforcement to be advocating for somebody that's convicted, but it's the right thing to do. And we've always, at least I'm speaking for myself, and I know Denny well enough, that it's all about, finding the truth and doing the right thing. That's what we raise our right hand for when we swear ourselves in. And I'm so bothered by that I want to advocate for Cress until I die.
David Moran is a criminal law professor at Wayne State University and the attorney who represented Tom in his efforts to receive a new trial. Dave told us why Tom's case still keeps him up at night.
It's the most disturbing case I've ever handled, because you have a man who is so manifestly not guilty of the crimes for which he was convicted. The process by which he remains in prison is so manifestly unfair, and the evidence was destroyed. What keeps me up at night is thinking about that evidence that was burned in October 1992 and what that evidence would have shown. And the people who have reinvestigated this case, Detective Mullen, Commander Newman, my investigators, and the other lawyers who've represented Tom Cress along the way, have no doubt what that physical evidence would have shown. This was a man convicted entirely on the basis of informant testimony, people who hoped to collect a reward, and who did collect a reward for implicating somebody months and months after the killing, actually years after the killing. This case has all of the hallmarks of a wrongful conviction, but no DNA evidence left to exonerate the defendant, and the only reason there's no DNA evidence left is because the prosecution got rid of it. That is very disturbing. It keeps me up at night, and it'll keep me up at night as long as Tom Cress remains in prison.
Why should the parole board grant him commutation?
They can correct a wrong. In all the cases I've handled, including the other exonerations I've handled, as I mentioned, I've handled 6 exonerations in my career. I've never had police officers on my side. I've never had a case like people like Detective Mullen and Commander Newman, who've reinvestigated a case and who essentially threw away their careers trying to do the right thing. So I think the parole board, or the commutation panel, should look at this case as an exceptional case where the justice system simply misfired, where the police professionals who've been involved in this case all along, who've been involved for years, who sacrificed their careers for this case, know that the wrong man is in prison, a man with no history of violence. There is not any reason to think that if Tom Cress is released, he will commit any crimes at all. He was a man who was simply living on the margins of society, trying with his limited education and limited intelligence to get along. He was not, is not, and will never be a threat to society. He is a man who has been wronged by the justice system. And if the commutation and parole board can't take the words of experienced homicide detectives who reinvestigated this case, then that's another injustice.
Finally, we met Tom's family in the home of Mark McLeod, Tom's brother-in-law, in Bellevue, Michigan. Through their frustration and anger, Tom's family revealed their pain, the pain that comes with the loss of a brother, an uncle, a father.
Whoever makes the decision on whether or not he gets out, however they make that decision, I was wondering if maybe they could come explain it to us. I mean, there's 2 suspects in a murder case. Whoever's got the most evidence piled against them is the guilty one. Well, there's no evidence against my dad. All of it's against this other guy. Why is he still there?
Despite their pain, they all have hope that Tom will be released and return home to them and the community.
I don't know specifically what Tom wants to do for a living, if, you know, or what he wants to do, but I've got plenty of work for him to do, you know. He doesn't have to work, you know. I know he's been through a lot, and the most important thing is just for him to get out. I know we prayed for it for years, that he would be released, and we just keep praying that God's will be done.
There's a lot of community, this whole entire community. If you go on the streets and you just randomly ask people, some people say they don't know him, but there's a lot of people who say that they do know about my dad's case. And they do believe he's innocent. And I have actually had people say that if he gets out, they would like him to work for them. And that they would like to want him to attend their church. And that there's a lot of people that say they pray for his children because they know that we have also suffered right along with my dad, and he is suffering.
Whoever ends up looking at this and watching this, I hope that they try to imagine what their family would be like if they were in our shoes. Just to honestly, before they make any decisions, to open up their hearts and look at everything that we have said everything that they've ever seen for any type of evidence, paperwork, anything. Honestly, look at it and put yourself in our shoes before you make a decision. See where we're coming from, what we've been having to deal with. Imagine yourself in our shoes. Because this is something that we haven't just dealt with for a month or a year. This is something that we've been dealing with for over 20. It's just something that we would love to see resolved.